Hi YouTube, Darth here. With the Thanksgiving holiday behind us in the United States, it's been a bit light on the Battlefield 4 CTE. There were only a couple of new releases between now and the last time I did a community test environment update. Now that we've got enough changes, I wanted to go over what's new on the CTE and what I've been thinking about these changes the last few weeks as I've been playing with them. So let's get started. One of the newest changes to come to the CTE in the last few weeks were changes to the helicopter physics. I went over this before, but what's new is that DICE has extended these changes to the rest of the helicopters, including the transports. If you're not familiar, this change most affects the attack helicopter, which can now turn much faster than previously and has had restrictions removed from the kinds of turns that it can perform. Most notably, this change has enabled helicopters to perform loops. This kind of maneuvering is neat, but not terribly effective in combat or at prolonging the life of the attack helicopter. The attack helicopter can still be one-shot by pretty much every non-seeking projectile in the game. Nevertheless, the results certainly are encouraging, and it's encouraged DICE to launch into a revamp of all the aircraft. The most noticeable change for the attack jets and stealth jets has been the removal of the optimal turn speed. In the live version of the game, if you are turning in a stealth jet at roughly 313 knots, you get the optimal turning radius and can turn faster than your opponent. In the CTE, this is no longer the case, and you pretty much always get the optimal turn rate as long as you're going as fast as possible. DICE's stated goal here was to remove the barrier to entry for aircraft for the majority of players. In the live game, it's pretty easy for a seasoned pilot to sweep the skies of new players. I've been able to do this regularly myself. I wasn't having that same easy time in the CTE, but it could just be that I was going up against other decent pilots. The second goal DICE had was to increase the skill depth to flying. I think in this, the change kind of fails. In my CTE experience, most aerial dogfights now devolve into a dead-even turning war, and the first player to leave the turn explodes. I recall I used a number of pejoratives while playing to describe my frustrations with the new flight model, but I can see where DICE is going with this. It's not fun to fly against experienced players if you're new. At the same time, I kind of worry about removing skill gaps from the game. What's the point of playing if you can never exceed even the most basic opponents through practice and skill? Maybe I'm overreacting as I've become quite accustomed to the existing model, but I highly encourage other pilots to go in the game and try out the new maneuvering against old and new pilots alike. And definitely leave a comment below letting me know what you think of the new flight model. For something a little bit less contentious, DICE has done a first-pass implementation of team balance. The balancer will move players at the start of a match when they join and at the end of a round. Additionally, DICE will be implementing mid-round balance further down the line, along with more polish to let players know what's going on. I think you all know my opinions on team balancing, and if you don't, be sure to check out the video link. My personal experience with balance on the CTE is that the test servers have been too lightly populated to get a good read for if it's doing well. At the very least, it hasn't felt intrusive, which is probably a good thing. One change that I've been waiting for a very long time is how audible footsteps are in Battlefield 4. If you've ever been knifed, a number of times you might be thinking to yourself, I didn't hear that guy at all. Well, the way that audio works in Battlefield 4 currently, you probably never could have. DICE had attempted a fix for this earlier this year, but ended up removing the change because of bugs. Now the change is back in, and I have already heard the difference. The gist of the lengthy change is this: if you have loud sounds near you, you won't hear footsteps as well. If it's relatively quiet near the player, you should now hear footsteps rather well. Loud sounds aren't just the sounds of battle around you, but also when you are firing your weapon. Additionally, the volume of footsteps will change based on how fast a player is moving, sprinting, walking, or crouch walking. The most used sights in the game are getting a slight upgrade. No longer are you restricted to cherry red with your sights. You can now change it to any color you would want from a combination of red, green, or blue. So it's probably more apt to call these rainbow dot sights from now on, rather than red dot sights. Additionally, you can change the size of the dot to suit your particular needs. These changes affect the red dots, 1x hollow, 3-4x, and 4x sights, or anything that's not a sniper scope. I've got to say that it's a nice little upgrade for something that you're already using, and players like myself love customization, so there's really no downside that I can see to this one. Plus, the pure green really stands out nicely against backgrounds, so I think that's what I'll be using from now on. But you might prefer a mauve dot sight, in which case that's also possible. Next up on the really nice little improvement list is the ability to customize hit indicators. Now you can colorize the hit indicators to what type of hit you're getting. You can tweak the normal body and limb shots, headshots, and the kill shot. If you thought the hit indicators were too fat, you can make them svelte once more, or you can make them even bigger. It's a nice compromise for players who can never seem to agree what a hit indicator looks like, and it extends the functionality of the existing system. Again, this seems like a pretty big win for players and a wonderful little feature addition. As with every update, there are a few changes worth mentioning that are pretty typical of iteration on the CTE. Recently, DICE continued to improve Obliteration Competitive, added weapon dog tags among others that now show kill numbers, a bug with the out of bounds effect not being removed has been fixed, and DICE has at least a seemingly working fix for a bug where vehicle wrecks wouldn't go away. So what's coming next for the CTE? It sounds like there may be more weapon changes in the works, and DICE spoke some this last week about more content coming to the game. They weren't specific about what it could be, but they released a poll asking players for their favorite maps from previous Battlefield titles. It's probably worth checking that poll out if you haven't already, and I'll put the link in the description below. That's it for this CTE Sunday. If you liked this video or found it informative, please be sure to leave a like before you go. If you're new around here, check out my channel and please consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.